Capone's
Most brutal gangster deaths ever.
rivals, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, February 14th, 1929, Chicago, Illinois. It was the height of Prohibition, and the city was divided between Al Capone's South Side gang and George Bugs Moran's North Side crew. For years, both sides fought for control of bootlegging, gambling, and racketeering. By winter, tensions had reached a breaking point. That morning, Moran's men gathered at a warehouse at 2122 North Clark Street.
Damn.
They were expecting a truckload of smuggled whiskey.
We can do another one if you want to,
supposedly
Wake.
a shipment arranged
Just
by
tell
a
me what
Detroit
video it is.
contact. But it was a trap. At approximately 10:30 a.m., a black Cadillac designed to look like a police vehicle pulled up outside the warehouse. 4 men stepped out. 2 wore Chicago police uniforms. 2 wore suits and long coats. Inside the warehouse, the
Go
7 men
Hawks,
had no
hell
reason to
no.
panic when the uniformed officers walked in. Police raised
Somebody
who were
reported
doing
me?
business in Chicago's
Damn.
underworld. The men complied without resistance, facing the brick wall with their hands raised. Seconds later, the disguised gunmen opened fire with Thompson submachine guns and shotguns, unleashing more than 70 rounds into the backs of the 7 men. When the shooting stopped, the gunmen switched to shotguns, firing additional rounds to ensure no one survived. In less than 10 seconds, the Northside gang was annihilated. The killers then executed their escape plan with theatrical precision. The 2 men in suits pretended to be under arrest, walking out with their hands up, while the fake police officers pointed guns at their backs. To any witnesses on the street, it appeared the police had arrived, stopped a crime, and arrested the perpetrators. The Cadillac drove away calmly into the Chicago morning. When real police arrived, they found 7 bodies riddled with bullets, some nearly unrecognizable. Frank Gusenberg, one of Moran's enforcers, had been shot 14 times but was somehow still breathing. When asked who shot him, he whispered, "Nobody shot me," before dying minutes later. Bugs Moran himself escaped. He had seen the police car outside and turned away before entering. He later told reporters, "Only Capone kills like that." Capone was in Florida at the time, and no one was ever convicted for the massacre. But the message was clear. The South Side had won. The brutality of that morning shocked the nation, marking the beginning of the end for the old gangster era. Even today, the St. Valentine's Day
It is
Massacre
gonna be a game.
remains one of
I
the
think it's
most
gonna be
infamous
28 to
killings in
24 our
American
way.
organized crime.
Or if I want to get disrespectful,
Dutch Schultz,
28-17
the
our
gangster who
way.
his own fortune. October
So we gonna have
23rd,
28 at least
1935.
though.
Newark, New Jersey, inside the Palace Chop House, a small restaurant on Park Avenue. One of New York's most notorious gangsters sat eating dinner with his men. Dutch Schultz,
We
real
can throw
name
on some
Arthur
flight.
Flegenheimer, was calm, almost cheerful. He didn't know it yet, but his empire was already collapsing around him. For nearly a decade, Schultz had built a fortune through bootlegging, gambling, and extortion. He ruled the Bronx and parts of Manhattan with brutal efficiency. But by 1935, things had changed. Prohibition was over. Federal agents had turned their attention to his illegal rackets, and Schultz
Dang.
had become a target of U.S. Attorney Thomas
What-
Dewey,
what-
the
what-
man
what should we do
responsible for
tomorrow,
putting away
YK?
some of New York's biggest mobsters.
What
Schultz
should we do
wanted
tomorrow?
Dewey dead, but when he brought the idea to the National Crime Syndicate,
We can do
led by
that.
figures like Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky, they refused.
We can do that.
Killing a prosecutor, they said, would bring too much heat on everyone. Schultz didn't care. He decided he'd do it himself. The other bosses made their own decision. Dutch Schultz had to go. That evening, Schultz arrived at the Palace Chop House with 3 of his men. They ate steak, drank whiskey, and talked business. At 10:15 p.m., Dutch Schultz went to the bathroom when 2 men entered the restaurant. They were hitmen from Murder, Inc. One hitman approached the restroom after him, opened the door, and fired. One bullet hit Schultz in the stomach, another in the side. In the dining area, the second hitman opened fire on the others, hitting all 3, killing them instantly. Within seconds, the restaurant was filled with gun smoke and blood. The gunman fled into the night. Schultz, somehow still alive, staggered out of the bathroom, bleeding heavily. He was rushed to Newark City Hospital. Surgeons operated for hours, but the damage was catastrophic. As morphine dulled the pain, Schultz began muttering illogically, rambling about his money, his enemies, and something buried somewhere in upstate New York. According to detectives, he spoke
Facts,
of
we
a
can do
fortune
it. We
hidden
can do
in a
that
steel
tomorrow.
box filled with cash, gold, and bonds. The supposed location, somewhere near Catskill, New York, has never been found.
Facts.
Whether it was
Facts,
real
we
or
can do
just
that
the
tomorrow.
delirious talk of a dying man, no one knows. Dutch Schultz died the next evening, October 24th, 1935. Pablo Escobar, July 22nd, 1991, Envigado, Colombia. Pablo Escobar, head of the Medellin cartel, turned himself in to authorities. He agreed to stop the violence, on one condition. He would build his own prison, a place called La Catedral. Construction began immediately. Escobar's men cleared land and built high walls, guard towers, and electric fences. But inside, it was nothing like a prison. La Catedral had a soccer field, a bar, a jacuzzi, even a waterfall. Escobar's cell had a king-sized bed, stereo system, and a fireplace. He could host friends, family, and cartel associates whenever he wanted. Armed guards, loyal to him, stood watch. For Pablo Escobar, prison was just another mansion. From there, he continued running his cartel. Drugs still moved, money still flowed. Visitors came and went freely. Politicians, family members, and hitmen, all under his control. By 1992, rumors spread that he had tortured and murdered 2 former associates inside La Catedral. That was too much for Bogota to ignore. When officials demanded he be transferred to a real military facility, Escobar refused. On July 21st, Colombian troops surrounded the prison, but when they entered, Escobar was gone. He had escaped through a hidden exit built into the mountain. For more than a year, Escobar was hunted by the Search Block, a special unit trained and funded by the United States. Informants tracked his calls and movements across Medellin. He narrowly escaped several raids. December 2nd, 1993. Medellin, Colombia. Police intercepted a call to his son. They traced it to a middle-class neighborhood. As they closed in, Escobar and his bodyguard fled across the rooftops. A brief gunfight followed. Escobar was hit and fell onto a red-tiled roof, dead at 44 years old.
No.
Whitey Bulger, the ghost of Boston.
I didn't know Pablo Escobar died. I thought he was in jail.
October 30th,
I never knew that.
2018, USP Hazleton, West Virginia. James
Yeah,
Whitey Bulger
McDaddy.
had been inside the prison for less than 12 hours. The 89-year-old former mob
I can't
boss,
believe I just
once
said
the
that.
most feared man in South Boston, had spent his final years shuffled from one federal facility to another. Medical problems, disciplinary issues, and constant conflicts with inmates who saw him as a target.
I say yes, it is a
followed him
blinker
everywhere.
check coin.
Late the night before, he'd arrived at Hazleton, a notoriously violent penitentiary with a reputation inmates summed up in 2 words: Misery Mountain.
Did I just say no? No, I was like no, because I was like, I didn't know he died. I thought he was in jail with El Chapo. Ain't El Chapo still alive, my name? I thought El Chapo and Pablo Escobar was in the same jail or something. I didn't know that. I knew there used to be some crazy guys though, bro. No cap.
Correctional officers rolled him into his new housing unit around 10 p.m.
What?
Bulger was in a wheelchair.
Whoa! NBA YoungBoy has a song about this guy. Whitey Burglar. Hold on. Let me see if I can remember the lyrics. I don't know. I don't remember the
Frail,
lyrics.
hunched, visibly exhausted. But to the
Dang,
men
Dom's
already
both of
inside-
y'all's uncle. Dang, Dom, how many nephews you got, fam? They all your fucking nephews.
By
bro.
Hazleton, his reputation hadn't faded. He wasn't just a gangster. He was an FBI informant. And inside federal prison, that was a death sentence. By sunrise on October 30th, word had already spread through the unit. A high-profile inmate had arrived. Someone whispered a name. Within minutes, everyone knew exactly who was sitting alone in cell 132. At around 6 a.m., 2 inmates walked directly toward Bulger's cell. Both were organized crime veterans, serving long sentences with nothing left to lose. They didn't hesitate. They didn't run. They simply disappeared inside the cell and closed the door behind them. What happened next lasted less than 2 minutes. The men attacked Bulger with a padlock wrapped in a sock, a weapon easily hidden but deadly in close quarters. They struck his head and face repeatedly. By the time guards found him, Bulger was slumped sideways in his wheelchair, his face so severely beaten he was almost unrecognizable. The attack was personal, meant to send a message. To them, Bulger wasn't just another inmate. He was a rat. Medical staff arrived, but there was nothing to be done. At 6:20,
Hold on, I gotta go back, bro. I hate going back, but I gotta hear the story. What? I don't even know who this is. I just know he has a song about by him.
Whitey Bulger, the ghost of Boston, meets his end.
I gotta
October
see the
30th,
beginning.
2018, USP Hazleton, West Virginia. James Whitey Bulger had been inside the prison for less than 12 hours. The 89-year-old former mob boss, once the most feared man in South Boston, had spent his final years shuffled from one federal facility to another. Medical problems, disciplinary issues, and constant conflicts with inmates who saw him as a target followed him everywhere. Late the night before, he'd arrived at Hazleton, a notoriously violent penitentiary with a reputation inmates summed up in 2 words: Misery Mountain.
So what is Whitey Bulger known for? What is he known for? I know what you do with Sox
1945, Las Vegas, Nevada. Benjamin Siegel partnered with nightclub owner Billy Wilkerson to build a luxury casino resort. When Wilkerson ran out of money, Siegel offered to help, $1 million for a share of the business. Siegel had made his name in New York through bootlegging, gambling, and killings during Prohibition. He was ruthless and violent. Other gangsters called him Bugsy, crazy as a bedbug, because of his temper. He hated
everything wrong.
Anyone who called him Bugsy risked getting hurt. Siegel took control of the project and pushed Wilkerson out. He renamed the resort the Flamingo after his girlfriend. He wanted to create something Las Vegas had never seen, a luxury resort with palm trees, fine dining, and Hollywood style. Costs kept rising. Siegel borrowed more and more money from the mob. Every time they asked questions, he made excuses and asked for more cash. What started as a simple investment became a financial disaster. By early June, the bosses had had enough. They thought Siegel had lost control, or that he was stealing from them. It didn't matter if it was true. To the mob, the Flamingo was now an embarrassment. Someone had to pay. June 20th, 1947, Beverly Hills, California. Siegel sat reading the Los Angeles Times. At 10:45 p.m., 9 bullets came through the window. 4 hit Siegel, 2 to the head, 2 to the body. 1 bullet knocked his right eye out of its socket. It landed 15 feet away. He died instantly. The shooter disappeared. No witnesses, no car description. No one was ever charged. But what happened next sent a clear message. Within hours, the same night, Siegel's replacement was already in Las Vegas, taking over the Flamingo. No arguments, no delay. The change happened as if it had been planned all along. Joe Masseria, Dinner with Death. April 15th, 1931, Coney Island, Brooklyn. Giuseppe Joe the Boss Masseria ruled the American Mafia with an iron fist for a decade, violent, unpredictable, and unwilling to compromise. But by spring 1931, the underworld was
What y'all niggas eat in the chat today? What y'all eating in the chat today? Let me know what y'all eat today.
A brutal conflict known as the Castellamarese War was raging, a deadly power struggle over the future of
I'm gonna see what I'm gonna get tomorrow.
Masseria had made too many enemies to survive. That evening, Masseria arrived at Nuova Villa Tomaro, a quiet Coney Island restaurant where he felt safe. He came for what he believed was a friendly dinner with one of the few men he still trusted, Charles Lucky Luciano, his right-hand man. What he didn't know was that Luciano had orchestrated the betrayal that would end his life. Inside the restaurant, the two men ate casually. Pasta, wine, cigarettes. Everything appeared normal. But outside, 4 of Luciano's most dangerous allies waited in a car. Vito Genovese, Albert Anastasia, Joe Adonis, and Benjamin Bugsy Siegel.
Damn.
Each had been promised a new world, one without Masseria's old-school tyranny. Just after 10 p.m., Luciano excused himself from the table, claiming he needed to use the restroom. He never returned. Minutes later, the hit squad entered through a side entrance. Masseria was still seated, cigar in hand, cards spread on the table. He barely had time to react. Gunfire erupted, swift, coordinated, merciless. Multiple rounds tore through Masseria's chest, back, and head. He collapsed over the table, cards scattering, the cigar still burning between his fingers. By the time the gunman disappeared into the night, Masseria was dead, slumped in a scene that would become one of the most iconic images in Mafia history. Luciano returned moments later with police, playing the shocked survivor. But investigators saw through it immediately. There were no signs of struggle, no overturned furniture, no defensive wounds. Masseria had trusted whoever walked through that door enough to remain seated. The execution was precise and professional, a signature of the new generation rising to power.
Damn, and just like that. Stay away from the mob and mafia, man.